I'm Zoe Burgess-Foreman. By day, I research anime. My specialty is Lost Decade, anime as social commentary. By night, I write homoerotic paranormal romance. So I originally came into the ideas of folklore through Japanese urban legends from being a fan of their cinema. So I like films like The Ring and Grudge, or Ju-On. And Ju-On, again, is a horror film about someone who dies horrifically and therefore their spirit stays around. And they both featured this Yurei-type creature. And when I started watching anime, I started seeing where these urban legends from. And much like Sarah said, these were modern films using kind of modern technologies and modern stories, using a creature that was part of Japanese culture and history and how far back these mythologies and these yokais came from. And then I got really into anime, and I got very much into horror anime, and things like Jijoku Shoujo, which is Hell Girl, which is basically part traditional Japanese mythology and part very modern society, in the fact that this anime was about if you wanted to curse someone because you were having a really tough life, at midnight you would log into the internet and contact Hell Girl. And Hell Girl and her bands of yokai that worked together would go and basically get your revenge and curse you. And so the curse mythology, the straw doll mythology, is from Japanese folklore. The creatures this is why I'm going to ask you if you remember, the Wenyudo was one of them, who was a guy who died horribly and is now a head on a firing wheel. And yeah, so all these characters from traditional folklore helped Hell Girl in modern society with modern Japanese, and it's that blending of those two realities and what it kind of said about the way Japanese society was going that really got me interested in learning more about their folklore. Thinking of bridging again, depends on the age or what genre the anime is made on. So something like Yokai Watch, which is essentially Pokemon for yokai, is obviously for very young children that want to go out and catch their own yokai. Then something like Gegege no Kitaro, even though it's got all the traditional yokai in it, it's again very much they're very cutified in much of the way. And also it's very much a shonen series where he goes out and does battle with them each week. And then a lot of the ones that Sarah mentioned, where they reinterpret the yokai to be more attractive, especially to females. There's a big market for making them hot for young women. The latest series is Occult Civil Servants, which is the title of the series, and it's about a night brigade of civil servants that have to go and keep peace between the various spirits that live in the park. So the Tengus are fighting with the angels, and the fairies are not happy that a spirit demon is stealing their fairy dust, and this group of attractive men have to go in and be diplomats to it, and it's oh, Japan, gotta love you. And then when it comes to bridging of, as you were saying, Western and Eastern, for me, one of my favourite animes is something called Shiki. And Shiki is about reanimated corpses, but they come across as Western vampires. But in Japan, it's very much the traditional mythology and the opposite of urban setting, the suburban setting and the traditional wood crosses and very much traditional funeral rites, but blending it in with these Western characters who move into a Western mansion, and how they kind of blur this. They use Westernism as a way to bring fear. So it's Japanese rural area is afraid of what this big Western influence will be, and therefore corpse demons are the answer in that particular case. It's basically kind of Japan's answer to Salem's Lot, but with a bit more social commentary. Yeah, a lot of vampire mythology is tied in with Christianity. The other really famous one is Trinity Blood, where all the vampires work for the Vatican. Well, one of the vampires works for the Vatican, and a lot of and it's kind of all related with and they're called Cain and Abel. I was going to say a lot of it relates to for me, social commentary, and the fact that, as I said, with things like Jijoku Shoujo, it's a lot like, I mean, for us, old fairy tales and stories of the past were like, words of caution for children. And I think a lot of original yokai, like mythology and stories, are again could be like interpretations of like these are words of warning. The one that comes to mind is, I can't remember the Japanese, but filth licker. Filth licker is very shy of humans and lurks in bathrooms and likes to lick dirty things. And so Japanese children are taught, if you don't clean yourself, filth licker will come along and lick you a lot because you're dirty. So Japanese children like, must stay clean because we don't want this weird bathroom goblin to lick us. And then up to things where they are reappropriating some of the law to kind of warn modern society that if you start doing things and not believing in certain mythologies, or start like, they're very much a believer that if you make a lot of wrong choices, it kind of curses your soul and like it kind of blackens you. And if you don't believe on that, and that you have to get rid and purge some of this darkness in you, then like it's just going to weigh your soul down later. But a lot of the yokais and spirit worlds and stuff, if you believe in it, will help you along those paths. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a lot of like cautionary tales and trying to kind of keep the things relevant and hoping that people still have those beliefs and kind of stay strong to their like belief systems. I was actually thinking about like not the bad examples, just because it's not my preferred genre of anime does not make it bad, but there are times when they've taken mythology and put it into anime, which only anime will do. And you have series such as Crawling with Love, which is basically what would happen if you had a harem anime where the elder ones from Cthulhu were all sexy girls that fell in love with the main protagonist, yeah? So, main protagonist, human guy, gets involved with the elder beast, such as Hatsur, I can only ever remember that one's name, and they're sexy girls that flock to him because that's what Cthulhu mythology was all about. And like, and some really bizarre reinterpretation. And then I remembered Monster Musume. And Monster Musume is very much the ecchi boy harem, but so many of the monster girls are based off traditional yokai, like the really famous one, which is the woman who's the spider. And she I can't remember and I mean, she turns up a lot in, if you ever see like a giant spider woman, she's in Triple X Holic, and she's basically like, the mythology goes from right back in the day when she used to lure handsome men into a pond by being beautiful, or she would wind up a bundle to make it look like a baby. So poor traveller would be like, oh no, a baby, oh no, it's not a baby, it's just a bundle of spiderwebs, I'm being eaten. And yeah, but she also now is a sexy girl in a harem situation. This is the tough one because the horror stuff feels more predominant due to the fact that the horror has come over to Western audiences. Like things like The Ring, Ju-On, like they've been marketed in the West, they've had Western releases. Japanese fantasy movies, much like a lot of the Asian fantasy movies, just don't make it across here. We don't see very many of them. Also, Japan cinema doesn't always really mind about budget. So their cinemas, their films made now in the fantasy, they all still have like, the guy in the suit representing the thing that's fighting. And to a Western audience that is used to seeing like Marvel movies, they're a bit off-put by the low quality of the fantasy films. But they do them. It's just not as marketed over here. And also like 2/3 of everything produced in Japan is anime. So there's much bigger pool to kind of draw from. The Death Note musical, that came out a few years ago. I'd love to see Death Note as a musical. They always end up as like having to be the forced hero. What's the word? Oh, I can't remember. Like the reluctant hero. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the anime. Like something like, The Devil is a Part-Timer, when he just wants to do a day job so that they can go back to his own realm. I think some fantasy characters want to have regular, normal lives, and some want to be the epic fantasy. I feel like there's kind of a bit of both, really. I can't think of many specific examples.